Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from the Corn Productions Deep Dive TV Podcast with my co-host Stacie. Here to talk about the original Quantum Leap, Season 4, Episode 21, titled Stand Up. The episode's description reads as follows. As part of a comedy act trio, Sam has to convince the other two members that they are in love while saving one of them from the mob. The episode was written by Deborah Pratt, and the episode was directed by Michael Zimberg. This is his last of his 9-episode work on the series. The episode takes place on April 30th, 1959, and originally aired on May 13th, 1992. Before we go any further, I'll tell you a couple of things. One, this is a sport-free podcast, so if you haven't watched the episode, I highly recommend you go and check it out, and then come back and give us a listen. Secondly, if you're listening on one of the platforms that this podcast is now available on, please follow and feel free to check out my YouTube channel, Corn Productions, where additional content can be discoverable, Quantum Leap related and otherwise. If you are on my YouTube channel, please like, share, and comment, and subscribe to our channel. All right, shout-outs this week.
All right.
I got Alpha, who said, I am watching stand-up in preparation for next week's show, this week actually now, but I suffered a neck injury from the nuclear-grade cringe caused by the opening sequence. 2 words, sheep season. I'll let you know if I am physically able to tolerate the rest of the episode. And then after that, he commented that he did in fact make it through the episode.
Well, that's good.
I'm getting the impression that perhaps Alpha does not really like this episode very much.
Yeah.
Now, I will say that if you have a bad drama, you can still find enjoyment out of that. If you have a bad horror movie, you can still find enjoyment out of that. So on and so forth. If you have a bad comedy, it is unwatchable. If you have something that's supposed to be funny and isn't, it is just simply not watchable. So we already have Alpha's opinion on this episode. I'll give mine and yours in a little bit. As far as Mimi Gallup, she says about Nomad in the new series, which was the Egypt-themed episode of that series that went along with the whole discussion on
Tahotep.
Tahotep. She said that that was a good episode. She liked the line, Toto, I don't know, I don't think we're in Kansas anymore. Regarding Al flip-flopping last week, it reminded him of Glitter Rock. You know, that's certainly an example of Al flip-flopping, but there are plenty of others.
Yep.
We've seen that throughout the series, including the Me Too episode and the Great Spontini episode. He flip-flops all over the place all the time. And he said, thank you for the history behind wow. Last week I could say it, but this week I can't. Tahotep. And she, of course, is enjoying the podcast on the new series as well as our current one.
Yeah.
And that's
all.
Thank
you for that, Mimi.
Of course. All right. So, Stacie, your thoughts on this week's episode?
All right. Yeah. So last week I said I don't really remember much about this episode. So now I watched it again and I took my notes and I know why I don't remember much. It's not a very memorable episode.
Yeah.
It's not funny. There's also some pretty serious drama happening, but it's not dramatic either.
Right. So, yeah, I remember liking this episode. I don't anymore. It's trying to be a 1930s screwball comedy. It kind of fails at that. Really, it just ends up being noise. But a lot of my problem comes down to the character of Mac. Mm-hmm. I think I have a different perspective on him than I did as a child, and he has not aged as a character very well for me.
Right.
He's just kind of a butthead,
yeah.
like really when it comes down to it. He's not likable, he's not funny, he's just kind of annoying.
I have to point out that the role was written
for Bob Saget.
Specifically for Bob Saget.
Yeah.
He wasn't cast in the role
Right.
was written for him.
Mm-hmm.
If that tells you anything about who Bob Saget was as a comedian.
Right. Now, it's kind of funny because, he did Full House, and of course we'll go through his credits later on, but he did Full House,
mm-hmm.
and he was this wholesome, American Dad kind of guy.
Right.
And then after he left Full House, he decided he wanted to be more of an edgier comedian.
I'm pretty sure the stand-up started even earlier than
Oh, really?
that. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I don't have dates in front of me, but I'm pretty sure he was already that guy.
Right.
I think the more astounding thing is that he did get cast as Danny
Yeah.
Tanner and was able to pull off that role.
Right, yeah. I guess what it comes down to is I don't find Bob Saget particularly funny or even charming or anything. I kind of realized that I don't really like the guy as an adult. Whereas maybe when I was younger, maybe I did find him a little bit funnier. Maybe I did enjoy him a little bit more than I do now, but I definitely do not now.
Yeah.
And not to speak, ill of the dead or anything, because unfortunately Bob Saget is no longer with us. But yeah, I mean, that's really what it comes down to is like as a kid, I related to him, which is a problem in itself. My 14-year-old self related to this character. My adult self looks at this character and goes, "Oh my God, what is this dude's issue?"
You're talking about Mac.
Yeah, Mac specifically, not Bob Saget himself. But.
Yeah, Mac isn't, does he deserve the girl?
No, I don't think he does.
And even at one point, Sam's like, I don't know if I should be setting them up.
Right.
I don't know why we're doing this.
He's like, I'm about to give somebody advice like I would a friend, but the only thing is here, he is not really my friend. I don't even know if I like this guy.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's a weird dynamic, for sure.
All right, so do you have anything else to say before diving in?
Yeah, so this is where I will talk about this thing that happened while researching this episode, is I discovered a long-time error that exists in the fandom.
Uh-oh.
So, like usual, I start my note-taking process by reading the entry on Al's Place, and I format my notes with, the leap date and the location and the characters, and then I watch the episode and take my notes, on the scene by scene, and then I go to IMDb and grab the actors' stuff from there. So that's my process, okay? So the location that was listed on Al's Place prior to yesterday, as of when we're talking, was that this leap takes place in Glendale, Arizona, and then they moved to Las Vegas.
Yep.
With a stop on the way somewhere in New Mexico, and there was even a note that doesn't make sense that they stopped in New Mexico because it wouldn't have been on the way.
Yep.
So I had that, in my outline of my notes, and then as we're watching the episode, well, we didn't leap into Glendale, Arizona. We leapt into the Poconos, which is in Pennsylvania. Anybody doesn't know what the Poconos is, it's the mountain range in Pennsylvania.
Okay. Where
in the 50s, it was a very common big-time vacation resort location. And then I said, okay, well, they must go to Glendale, Arizona at some point, right? Because again, I was not remembering this episode. I don't know how many stops they make and how many different clubs they go to. I'm thinking they must go from here to there and then to Vegas, right? And then I watch the episode and I get through the whole episode and I'm like, there was no mention of Glendale, Arizona. Not one.
Wow.
They went from Poconos in Pennsylvania across the country, driving, overnight. It would have been an over 24-hour drive. Stopped at that coffee stop in New Mexico, and then headed to Vegas. That's the locations of this episode.
So where did Glendale, Arizona come from?
I even pulled up the transcript of the episode to search for Glendale, to search for Arizona, to make sure I just didn't miss a line that was said somewhere. Because, that's possible. Maybe I missed it. No, neither of those words appear in this episode at all.
That's interesting.
So I was like, okay, I don't know what Brian's doing, but let me go check the rest of the internet, right?
Yeah.
So the fandom wiki for Quantum Leap for this episode says Glendale, Arizona.
Interesting.
I said, okay, well, Matt must have gotten it right? So I pulled out my Beyond the Mirror image book and I turned to stand up and Glendale, Arizona, it says.
Wow. So where do you suppose that originated from?
I don't know. So I messaged Brian and I was like, I have a research project for you. Why do all of these sources say Glendale, Arizona? I cannot find Glendale, Arizona. It's not in the episode. And he took a day and got back to me and said, yeah, you discovered another anomaly. He could not figure out where that came from. And he has changed Al's Place to say the leap-in location is the Poconos in Pennsylvania. And they traveled to Las Vegas and has removed any mention on Al's Place of Glendale, Arizona, because he could not find why that became a thing. So that's been a thing floating around the fandom for decades. And unless somebody can tell us why, where that comes from, I have no idea.
Interesting. That's maybe there was like some kind of Mandela effect or something.
That's what I was thinking. Like maybe in some reality. And I kind of want to talk to Deborah about this because she wrote the episode.
Well, send her, shoot her a message.
Like, was Glendale I idea for this episode at some point? Was it an idea for some episode? Does something happen in Glendale, Arizona?
You should shoot her a message and ask her that question.
I was so confused. And I'm still confused, but the end result is it wasn't just me. Brian went and checked, and he's like, yeah, you're right. This Glendale has nothing to do with anything, and I don't know where that came from.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh. And you spent a day looking at that, huh?
Well, I mean, I don't know how much of the day, but you got back to me a day later.
Gotcha. All right. So, anything else?
No, let's just head into the scene by scene.
All right, so Sam leaps into the middle of a comedy show with Mac, played by Bob Saget. 62 credits for him. Mostly famous for Full House. He reprised the role in Fuller House, and he has plenty of one-off guest appearances. I did not make note of when he died, but it was in 2022.
Yes, it was like right when Fuller House was ending.
Yeah,
was
basically.
When he passed.
Mm-hmm.
He did make it into the final episode, and then I think while the season was airing, he died.
Okay.
Or something close to that. He also was the narrator on How I Met Your Mother.
Okay.
205 episodes of that. A really weird choice, in my opinion.
As the narrator?
They had, this character of the series, and his name's escaping me, who's already a grown-up in the series, being voiced by Bob Saget. So this is who he's going to be in another 15 years.
You know who should have narrated?
The actor playing the role?
Okay. That's a possibility, but, Morgan Freeman should have been the narrator on that series.
No.
Or, heck, James Earl Jones, maybe.
Okay, listen.
Samuel L. Jackson.
Are you not familiar with How I Met Your Mother?
I am familiar with the show.
It's
yes.
the character in the show telling the story to his kids. So, no, that would have made it worse.
So he gets to be 60-year-olds and suddenly sounds like Bob Saget?
I guess.
Okay.
And, of course, he also was the original host of America's Funniest Home Videos.
Right, of course.
Did you think he was funny in that? I don't remember.
As a kid, maybe, but
I don't remember.
Sometimes. So, when we come back from the credits, basically, predictably they're bombing, and then they're getting heckled, and, Mac is starting to get hot-headed about this.
Yeah, so Mac's annoyed that Sam, who has left into Davy Parker, his partner here, is changing the routine without telling him. That's because, of course, Sam doesn't know the routine.
Right.
So there's this whole setup, a joke about a cop hauling the guy off who is naked and holding a sheep. And Sam's like, and I said, oh boy.
And
he doesn't know what to say.
Yep, credits. When we come back, Sam tries to save the routine but continues to bomb. But they are bailed out by Frankie, played by Amy Yazbek. 63 credits for her, including Problem Child, Wings. She was a regular on that series towards the later half.
74 episodes of Wings.
And an episode of Bones.
She was also in an episode of Pretty Little Liars.
I noticed that. I figured you were going to say it.
That one stands out for me.
Yes.
Troy and Belisario, Deborah's daughter, is a star in that show. And in the audience, we get to meet the character of Joey. Joey is the kind of right-hand man of our mobster. And
this is the one that's antagonizing.
Yeah, so okay. Mac and Joey are kind of fighting during this, right? He's egging him on, and Joey gets to the point where he literally has a physical altercation.
All right, I'm going to say that if you're a stand-up comic, if this is your profession, that you need to have a thicker skin than Mac apparently has. Yeah.
You cannot leave the stage and punch somebody because they don't like your jokes.
Right, yes.
Joey is played by Tom LaGrua. He was in 5 episodes of Home Improvement, 2 episodes of Golden Girls, and a bunch of one-off appearances. So yeah, Frankie joined them.
Frankie, she comes on stage.
So she's a waitress.
Yep.
She's waitressing. She decides to jump in and try and save them, and she continues the routine, and she tells a risque joke, and it goes well. It sort of saves the act a little bit, except then we get this fight with Joey, and things don't go well, and they basically end up just kind of fleeing. The 3 of them flee the stage.
So they end up arguing all the way up the stairs. Mac doesn't want Frankie as part of the act, and he ends up going into his room. Sam tells Frankie that he thought she was funny, and she goes up on this long rant of how much of a butthead Mac is, and Al steps in at the 7-minute and 19-second mark in the episode to have Sam ask, how does she really feel? And apparently she's crazy about him. And my note here says, this makes as much sense to me as Claire and Frank. Frank in the movie Scrooge. Like, I don't get why she's attracted to him at all.
Yeah, I see that.
I mean, he's not as terrible of a person as Frank is. He's not going to, kick any dogs or cats or, steal calves from old ladies. But,
I mean, he might.
Yeah, actually, you're right. He probably would.
Yeah, I don't see the attraction between them, but I do totally understand the way she's acting here. And Al picking up on the fact that she's crazy about him, it makes sense. I get it.
Yeah.
These are the same patterns that Al has with his relationships. He sees, and he specifically says at some point, I think his fourth wife, he had the same type of relation with her. I get it. That's beautiful, perfect, makes sense that Al would spot this and that would make sense to him because this is the same way he treats relationships.
Right.
Now, we also in this got the shot of our mirror image. The actor playing the mirror image of Davy Parker was Rafe Bastille. His only other credits besides this one was one episode of Hercules: The Legendary Journeys and one episode of She Spies.
She Spies.
I've never heard of either of those series.
I have heard of Hercules. I did watch a few episodes of that. Yep. That was with the... I actually can't think of his name.
I don't know. But I didn't take those kind of notes.
Right. But, all right, so Sam wants her to be a part of the act and tells her that she will wait tables no more. But the owner comes up the stairs and he's pissed. And this is Collins, played by Mark Leno. 58 credits for him, including National Security, The Wedding Singer, and City Hall. And Collins ends up firing them, and Al informs Sam that this is going to happen seconds before it does. There's a bunch of arguing and fighting, and Mac is here at this point. And then Mr. DeGoria comes up the stairs wanting to hire them because he likes the girl.
Right, so this is Carlo DeGorio, and he comes with Joey. Joey comes to apologize for fighting with Mac. And let's see, he's played by Robert Miranda. He was in Sister Act. He was in The Rocketeer, and he was in 3 episodes of Roseanne.
So he was in 70. He had 77 credits in total. He was also in Blue Streak, 13 Days, and he was in an episode of The Pretender as well. So basically, there's a bunch of so basically he wants to hire them to go to Vegas, and he also wants to have dinner with Frankie.
Right. So we get the setup right away that he's interested in Frankie. That's the reason he wants them to come to a show. That's the only reason he wants them to come to Vegas. And it's during this scene that we get the whole discussion about the Poconos. So the place we're at right now is the Cocono Club in the Poconos. And I think a lot of the confusion, now I still don't know where Glendale, Arizona comes from, but I think a lot of the confusion comes from people not understanding what the Poconos is.
Okay.
I even saw, like, in one of the fan pages somewhere, it said that the club they're at was the Poconos Club.
Ah.
No, it's the Cocono Club in the Poconos.
So I'm kind of curious if there's an actual Poconos Club in Glendale, Arizona. And maybe that's why people...
I don't want to think about that.
Okay.
But this also is where I want to bring up the conversation we had a little bit at the end of last week's episode about the send-off of the Lee Back.
Okay.
So we talked about this then.
Yes, we did.
At the end of that episode, Sam... We were told, we didn't get to see any of this, but this was a conversation between, was it between Al and Donna, or was it Ziggy?
It was Al and Donna.
Okay.
Yeah.
That Sam had leapt into a comic in the Catskills. And I don't know if last week we said Catskills or Poconos.
I don't remember either.
I feel like we got, this is where I need to, set it straight between all these locations.
Okay.
So, in that episode, we were told he leapt into a stand-up comic in the Catskills. But he was there to reunite a child with their mother, or something about a child.
Right, yep.
And we were talking about how that sounds an awful lot like this, except not this.
Right.
So yeah, the Poconos and the Catskills are the 2 locations. Very similar locations. Both in the Northeast, mountain ranges, where people in the 50s, and that was 56, this is 59, they had said that Leap was. In the 50s, this is where you go to vacation. These
Okay.
are where people brought their families, is to the mountains. So the Catskills, they're both part of the Appalachians, by the way. The Catskills are in New York State, between New York City and Albany. The Poconos being in the northeast corner of Pennsylvania, 140 miles apart. So pretty similar locations.
Okay.
And I don't know if you've ever saw, because this episode kind of reminds me of that genre as well. The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
I've heard of it, but I never
Which is about a female comic in the 50s. So very relatable to Frankie's story, right? It's about this woman trying to break into stand-up comedy. She goes to a resort in the Catskills to do acts. And it's also where oh my goodness, Dirty Dancing takes place.
Oh, okay.
Is in the Catskills.
I'm kind of curious if what we learn of Sam's Leap was actually the original script for what this episode ended up being.
Possibly, right?
And they just made changes.
Possibly that's the same, like, that was the narrative thread that led to this. That they came from the same piece of, notes from the writer's room. But they dropped the kid story and changed it from the Catskills to the Poconos, and somewhere along the line, Glendale, Arizona got into the mix. I don't know what that still comes from, but I don't. That's it. That's my story about location.
Okay, so Collins tries to unfire them, but that doesn't work out well.
He says, well, you're in contract for another 3 weeks. You can't go to Vegas. And they're like, you just fired us. Everybody heard you.
Yep, more arguing ensues. Al tells Sam that DeGoria is well connected, a.k.a. part of the mob. No kidding. And according to the original history, Mac disappears after their debut performance in Las Vegas. Meanwhile, Mac and Frankie are continuing to argue. They're doing it in the background. And then they come up, and it seems like that's the end of the fight. But Sam drives in a car, presumably off to Vegas. And how far is Pennsylvania to Vegas? Did we know?
It was a 30-something hour drive. When I looked.
That's absurd.
But it makes more sense that they're stopping in New Mexico on the way.
Right, okay. Sam drives while Mac and Frankie are sleeping. Frankie wakes up and suggests a cup of coffee because Sam has been driving for 10 hours now.
Right, so presumably before he drove, Mac drove. Yeah. They've been driving for a long time.
Oh, and while they're still asleep, Sam is basically arguing with Al about what happened to Mac.
So they leaped in on April 30th, and Mac's supposed to disappear after the first show, which is on May 2nd. So we've got, what is that, how many days are in April? 3 or 4 days we've got.
Gotcha.
So that's traveling. They're traveling. That's the idea. It's taking time to get there.
So
they go to Gallup, New Mexico for a cup of coffee, which is not on the way from Arizona.
Mimi's last name is Gallup, so that's interesting.
Oh, yeah. Shout out to Mimi Gallup.
Yep, there we go.
Gallup, New Mexico. Ever been there?
Yeah, let's, maybe you should. Maybe you should go there. Maybe some of your family's there. So
they go in. We meet the waitress. The waitress is played by Martha Jane Uran. Not a lot on her IMDb. She was in a movie called Odd Jobs.
Okay. So they go in, and Frankie overheard the part of the conversation, something about Mac dying, and he basically says, "Oh, I meant on stage." And then Al goes into this spiel about, how that's not the quite phrase for what happens when you're a comic and you die on stage. But anyway, Mac comes in acting like an ass, basically.
Yeah, so he was sound asleep. They couldn't wake him up. And this is one of those things that's very weird about Mac. And I expected there to be more to this situation. It was just really weird transition from he's asleep and we can't wake him up, so we're just going to let him rest, to no sooner than Sam and Frankie sit down, Mac comes in full of energy, rearing to go. It's almost like he was sleepwalking or something. Yeah,
and he's basically antagonizing an ice cream driver, a truck driver, which, you should never do.
Yeah.
You should never antagonize someone who wants to give you ice cream. But he also makes himself out to be, so he's basically getting into a fight with this truck driver.
Yeah, he sure likes to fight with people.
And Sam has to come in and save him. And he basically makes himself out to be a sexist who doesn't believe women can be heroes or funny. He's not a progressive guy, this guy here. But she basically is like, why do you act like that? Why do you have to act like a dork so that Sam has to
geek was the word she used.
Geek. so that Sam has to come in and save you, basically. And yeah.
And then she went on with the feminist streak about how women don't need to be rescued.
Yep.
Although she does in this episode need him.
Yeah.
I don't know. And Sam's just trying to redirect the conversation. He wants to talk about tomorrow night, because we're now one day from the show that they have to do, and they don't have an act yet. They have no act for 3 people, but all 3 of them have to be in this act because that's the deal that this mobster wants.
And yet, Mac is still insisting that she's not going to be part of the act, even though she is the only reason that they got hired to do this in the first place.
Right.
So she kind of has to be part of the act.
And she says here she wants to change her last name to Lane. And this leads to them doing a whole Superman bit.
And then
one thing I want to mention, she name drops Lucille Ball here, among a bunch of other female comedians. But
yep.
Lucy is very. I love Lucy. She's my childhood idol.
That happens to be the name of the show too.
It happens to be the name of the show, which was airing in 1959, so it is relevant to things that Frankie would be saying.
Yep.
But it's particularly appropriate here because the big underlying plot line of I Love Lucy, and I don't know how much you know about that series, but the big underlying plot line is Lucy wants to be in show business. And every other episode, the plot is she wants to be in Ricky's show, and he tells her, no, you can't be in the show.
Well, that sounds like a boring series. Just kidding.
So it's very much the same thing that's happening here, is Frankie's I want to be in the act, and Mac's like, no, you can't be in the act. It's the same story.
Right.
So definitely we have a nod there by mentioning Lucille Ball.
So Sam tries really hard to get them to work together, creating a bit in the diner, which eventually ends up getting them kicked out. Sam keeps the bit going into the parking lot, but it falls apart because Sam includes sex in the bit, and this offends Frankie. Yes.
Yeah, and that's of course Al's the one who snuck that in there.
Yeah, Al is the one to blame.
So throughout this, and we had some great lines back in the car about Sam's telling Al, I'm not funny. Right. I don't know how to do this. And Al's like, don't worry, I'll help you. We got Ziggy to help you. Right? So Sam's just repeating whatever's coming out of Al's mouth because he has no idea how to do this.
Yeah, you should know better than that. You should know better than to just, parrot
so Al asks, how do Superman and Supergirl have sex? And Sam repeats it. And I think he didn't realize what he was saying until he said it. And Frankie was offended. But Mac's just like, well, there you go. This is proof she can't be a comic. Yeah,
and this leads to more arguments, and Mac and Frankie are going at it some more.
Yeah, and this is where Al talks about his 4th wife and how they had the same type of relationship. And he tells Sam that he needs to get them to kiss each other because as soon as they realize they love each other, it's going to save the day. And I'm not sure why that's going to save the day because you already said you're here to keep Mac from dying.
Right.
So he can't even decide what we're here to do.
Right. So Al's just getting them to kiss. This ends up backfiring as she ends up kissing Sam instead. And this leads to more arguing. And Mac says, lose the broad or get another
Because
partner.
At this point, Mac thinks there's something going on between Frankie and Davey.
Right.
She's like, oh, he goes, you slept with her, didn't you? Because we'd already established at the beginning when they were fighting that they were dating. Mac and Frankie were dating. But it kind of fell apart when Davey offered her a shot to be in the act. And that's when Mac was like, nah. So there already is some history there.
Right.
Just they haven't admitted that they actually love each other and want to be together. Mm-hmm. And working that into also the idea of working together.
Right.
Which I guess is just too much for Mac to handle.
It doesn't seem like Mac can handle anything.
He can't handle anything.
Before
we move on, I just want to that ice cream trucker.
Yeah.
He was played by Pete Shrum. He was in Terminator 2.
Oh, yes.
And he was in 5 episodes of Chip and Dale's Rescue Rangers.
Oh, that's interesting. Terminator 2. He was probably the truck driver that ended up...
I don't know.
Yeah, but... okay, so... Al, watching this whole thing plays out, ends up letting out an oh boy, which I thought was cute. At the theater, DeGoria ports with Frank...
At the casino.
The casino.
We made it to Vegas.
Yep.
And by the way, the casino that Carlo owns, we're told is hang on, I gotta backtrack in my notes. The Golden Sand, which doesn't actually exist, but what does exist is the Sands Casino, which is probably what this is supposed to represent. The Sands Casino was opened in 1952, And right here, when we're heading into the I can say theater because you said into the casino, we get an establishing shot. Or actually, it might be later in the episode. At some point in this episode, we get an establishing shot of the Sands sign.
Oh, okay.
The actual real casino. So I'm not sure why they would have used the establishing shot of the real casino called the Sands while calling it the Golden Sands. I mean, I guess because they don't want to, get in trouble for, saying the mob owns it or whatever.
Right.
And being, deflammatory in that way.
And getting sued.
So they made it a fictional place. But, of course, the mob did own all of Vegas in the 50s. I think that's pretty well known.
Yes, I'm pretty familiar with that. But, so yeah, DeGoria is flirting with Frankie. Sam tries to pass block, but it doesn't work out so well. Frankie ends up echoing Al's joke about being the main course. And the other thing is Mac is still pretty much not talking to them at this point. Sam explains that Mac is in love with her. And she's like, so she buys into this. She ends up going away. And Ziggy explains that every time he gets close to success, Mac ends up changing the act. Mac is a kid who does crazy things to get attention, which is why he got into show business in the first place. And they basically come up with this theory where Mac kind of sees Frankie as a threat because I don't even know. I can't really follow the logic all that well.
He doesn't want to see. He wants to see, but subconsciously he self-sabotages himself. And that applies both to the act and to relationships. And she's a double threat there, right? She can help the act and she can give him this life that he really wants. But he's so afraid of failure that he won't accept the wins.
Right.
So he's pushing her away on both ends. And of course, that's an explosive situation for everybody. And it's almost a side note here that this guy's going to kill him.
Right.
Because he wants Frankie. It's such a weird... It's not cohesive. It's not a cohesive story.
No.
It's very, very strange. We also in that scene got to meet the stage manager, Charlie. Charlie's played by Will Albert. He was in 3 episodes of Night Court. He was in the movie Getting Even with Dad with Ted
Danson.
Ted Danson, yes, that's the one.
Yep. Okay, so Sam goes and visits Mac, narrating on his way, which is something we were talking about at the top.
Right. This is where he's like, I don't like this guy.
And Mac is resistant to this conversation. And then he spins a long, depressing tale of what will happen, when he gets together with Frankie.
Yeah, he's basically like, so we'll get married, and then we'll have kids, and then we'll get divorced, and we'll ruin the kids' lives.
Yeah, he basically sounds like my attitude these days, honestly. But so I can kind of relate on that way. But yeah, Sam suggests, hey, before you end up dooming your kids' lives, why don't you start with asking the girl out and starting small.
Yeah, slow down a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit. And he finally convinces him to do that and to practice the routine. So they end up practicing their routine, and we see a montage of that.
A successful rehearsal. At least we're supposed to believe it was successful.
Right. I mean, it's not working for me. It's not. I don't find any of this particularly funny, but it seems to be going well in universe. And before he's going to go to the shower, Max says he wants to go take a shower, but Sam isn't going to let him.
He even apologizes to Frankie. He tells her she did a great job in the rehearsal. Things are going well.
He apologizes and confesses his affections, and she suggests starting over, and then they kiss.
They kiss, and Sam and Al both think it's time to leave, but there's still 15 minutes left in the episode, so it's not going to be that easy.
DeGoria enters the picture with a dress for Frankie for dinner.
It was a coat, actually.
Oh, it was a coat?
It was like a fur coat. And he says anything you wear underneath it is optional.
Right. Well,
meaning he doesn't want her to wear any clothes.
Well, sure, but it could also mean that maybe he wants, whatever fancy outfit you want to wear, it's totally on you. Maybe this is a completely innocent statement.
It was not an innocent statement.
Okay.
Mac did not take it as innocent. He punched Carlo.
Okay, so first of all, punching a mobster is bad for one's health. I'm just gonna tell you that.
But Mac likes to punch people.
Sure. The second thing is, how is any of this Frankie's fault? Frankie is just kind of...
It's not. Frankie hasn't done anything. She does not want to be dessert. She's expressed that.
She's just kind of looking at DeGorio with like a deer in headlights.
And it's funny because in the Pocono scene...
Yep.
Frankie declined the first dinner invitation. She was like, nah, that's okay. And Mac's the one that was like, of course she'll have dinner with you.
Right, yes.
He was pimping her out.
Yeah, exactly. But now he's like, oh, I'm going to punch you in the face. Like, dude, like, yeah. He doesn't make a lot of sense, to be honest.
He doesn't.
But yeah, not only does he punch DeGorio out, but then he blames Frankie for it.
Right.
And all Frankie
he's like, I knew you were no good.
Like, is it her fault that some other guy decided to give her a fur coat and hit on her? That's not her fault. She doesn't even reciprocate in any way. She just stands there like a deer in headlights, basically. Right. And then, yeah, Frank does what he does.
Mag.
Yes. Well, that's what I meant to say.
Yeah, I know that's what you meant to say. And Al says history's now changed.
Yep.
But not in a good way, because now they don't go on tonight at all. Originally they went on and then Mac disappeared. Now they don't go on at all. And instead of Mac disappearing, they find his body in the desert in 1982, 1985, and 1989. So I'm insinuating he is cut up into little bitty pieces and dispersed to different locations.
I'm actually kind of curious how exactly you would identify the body in pieces.
Fingerprints?
Did you DNA tested the body so that you could determine who the body belonged to?
In the 80s, probably. We had that in the late 80s, didn't we?
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either. But definitely fingerprints and dental records. So there's two.
Yep.
And if the two arms were at different times.
Okay.
So.
All right. Fair enough.
There's three. There's three right there. 2 hands and a mouth give you 3.
So Frankie goes and talks to Mac, and Sam tries to find DeGorio, but doesn't exactly succeed in that. And they end up double teaming Mac, and Frankie ends up kissing him. And basically, Sam insists they need to get ready for the show, and that he's not going to allow Mac to go.
Yeah, this was the whole I want to take a shower scene that you mentioned earlier. Yeah. You had that little bit of the wrong spot. So yeah, we fixed it real quick, right? Where Frankie's doubling down and is like, I don't want to be with him. I want to be with you. And this is where she's like, who are you gonna come home to, Mac? Like, you don't want to be alone. You want to be with me. Mm-hmm. And it's ridiculous.
Aww.
The whole thing's ridiculous.
Yes.
To the fact that you confuse the last scene and this scene. Right. Shows you how ridiculous it is that we just keep doing the same thing over and over again throughout this episode.
Yeah, basically fight, make up, fight, make up. It's just the same rinse and repeat thing over and over again.
Right.
And yeah, basically Sam does not want him to go take a shower because he doesn't want him to get caught by the mob and
Al
killed.
Says there's a 90% chance still that Mac won't make it to the show. But Sam's doing his thing, and he's trying to keep them united and keep them from fighting, and that's what's going to save him, because if they stick together, like, we're going to be able to outsmart this gangster, I guess. And the timeline shifts. Al says it's working. They're now able to do the show, but he still gets killed. It's just the timeline's moving out of when it's going to happen.
Great. And Al insists that Sam has to go on and perform because there's a scout in the audience, and this is how Mackey's going to get his big break, and how
Davey's going to get his break.
Davey, that's what I meant to say.
He's going to meet a wife and have 3 kids, all because of this contract he's about to sign.
Sweet.
So he's fixing the life of his host. That's great. But we still don't know what happens to Mac, and we apparently still are here to save him for some reason. Singing during this scene is Maria Rose, the character of Maria Rose, who is actually played by Rosemary Tarquino. I'm not sure why they would have reversed her name for the fictional character, but she only has, this is her only acting credit, and then she has 2 random producing credits for things I'd never heard of.
Gotcha. So the show begins. We see the routines. Sam ends up singing, and there's more routines.
Sam sings "Smoke Gets in Your Eyes." We were told at some point he's the singing half of the duo.
Yes, which I'm sure is to
get Scott Bakula to sing, right? But it's weird. Like, you're a comedy act and you're stopping to sing in the middle of it. I'm not sure I understand this set.
Right. So the show seems to be going well, but after the show, DeGoria and his goons show up and nab the 3 of them.
Well, they nab Mac.
Right.
So what happens is the 3 go off stage. The MC calls them back on, like, for a reprisal. But Mac doesn't come back. He was taken. So just Sam and Frankie come back. And that's when they realize, oh, wait, what happened to Mac? He was taken. And the MC, by the way, is played by John Ooh, John Mellichar. He was in an episode of Twilight Zone, the 80s version, and an episode of Beyond Belief.
Right, that's the Jonathan Frakes hosted show.
Which I see a lot in credits, and I don't usually write it down because the whole title of it's like really long.
Yeah.
And I usually find something shorter to type.
Gotcha. All right, so they end up going into the kitchen to get Mac. Sam ends up with pie on his face. DeGorio shows up when he's trying to say, hey, look, let's just talk to DeGorio. I'm sure we could talk this out.
Joey shows up first, shoots a gun. It's this whole thing, right? And it's pretty obvious at this point that, yes, we're the mom and we're going to kill him.
Right.
They're making no allusions to anything else happening here at this point.
Right. And, Sam is like, oh, if you kill him, then there's going to be authorities and all that. And DeGorio's like, well, missing and dead are two very different things.
He's like, if there's no body, then there's no trial. And Al agrees with him. I mean, this isn't necessarily true, but I guess in the 50s, maybe that was more the case. He's mad at Joey. Carlo's mad at Joey for shooting a gun in the club. But yeah, it doesn't seem like reasoning's going to work. Al's like, this is a life or death situation. Sam, be careful, because he's never dealt with mobsters before.
Yeah, so Sam ends up trying to talk themselves out of the situation, and then suggests that Mac and Frankie are engaged. And Frankie plays along with this, and this seems to diffuse the situation. I'm not sure that it actually would.
Yeah, he's like, why didn't anyone tell me they were engaged?
Right, yeah.
And so Mac, thankfully, eventually follows along. He doesn't say, no, we're not, because I expected him to do that.
Right. And then that's how Mac died.
But he catches on, and they agree they're getting married, and that's the reason, Mac has been so protective of Frankie. Then why did you set her up on the date in the first place?
Right, yes.
I don't think Carlo's that smart either.
No.
But he's like, oh my gosh, why didn't anybody tell me? And he gives them a hug. He kisses Frankie on the cheek.
And then he punches Mac.
Right? Because he's still you don't think that,
you're going to get off scot-free, basically.
Yeah. But he takes
see what I did there? Scot-free?
He takes them both by the arms, and he's like, we're going to have the wedding here on me. And he takes them to start planning a wedding, because I guess the idea is that the Italian mob loves weddings. We've seen one before.
Yes, we have. In a first season episode, we saw a mob wedding.
So I guess they have to get married now?
Yeah.
Then you got to continue this, because he's planning your wedding at this club.
So, I'm not predicting a very long future for this couple.
Well, we're told they stay together.
Wow.
Al says that Frankie and Mac go on as McKay and McKay, and they even have a couple of Broadway hits that they write. They moved to Connecticut and are still married today being 1999 or wherever we are.
Yeah, I'm pretty surprised by that, because this is a literal shotgun wedding.
Yeah,
we're doing
they're
here.
kind of they're forced into a charade. They're forced into a wedding, and maybe they decided to date, but they're getting married now, whether they want to or not. Their lives depend on it.
Right. So Sam was left alone with Al, and Frankie and Mac go on to. We already mentioned that. Sam attempts to pie Al, and Al acts like he's worried that Sam is actually going to pie him, and then
of course
it goes
the pie
straight
doesn't
through. Yeah.
touch him because he's not there. We should know that by now.
Right. And that was actually a comment that Alpa made, was he basically said, why did Sam have to waste a perfectly good pie?
I mean,
and then at the same time, he pied a pylon or whatever. Someone's going to have to clean that mess up.
Yeah.
Some poor schmo is going to have to clean up this pie. Thanks, Sam.
I mean, it wasn't the first pie.
You know what?
He was already got in the face with a pie. There's already a mess.
We need Ben Song to leap in and prevent that from happening.
Pie?
Yeah, so that we're not ruining some poor schmo's day by having him clean up a mess.
It's probably a better day than it would have been if we got shot.
Fair enough.
That probably would have been a bigger mess.
Probably. You're right. Okay, so Sam prevents the bigger mess in the kitchen.
Yeah.
The dead body that they were going to have to clean up. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
And basically, of course, Sam leaps.
Sam leaps, and he leaps into Bingo's dream.
Yes. Bingo, bongo.
Bingo, bango, bongo.
That was close.
You're close.
And that, of course, is the season finale of season 4.
It's a great episode. A Leap for Lisa. Can't wait to talk about it next week. Where Sam is Al.
Yes, it's a great finale. Terry Farrell. She was, of course, in the Dax in Deep Space Nine.
Yes.
So just to give a little idea of what our intentions are, we're doing the finale of season 4. And then Quantum Leap is going to go on the shelf for a while because we have all this content, all this stuff coming out.
Yeah, because our fall shows are all coming back next week. Starting next week from season 3 starting. And then I think just a week or two later, Sullivan's Crossing season 2 starts in the U.S.
And then we're going to cover potentially another show.
Another show that we're looking to cover. And we've got a busy lineup coming, including all of October. We're going to be bringing you horror and Halloween movies for Halloween month.
Yes.
Some Thanksgiving movies in November, Christmas and holiday movies in December, all in addition to our fall TV lineup.
And we still have one Quantum Leap episode that will come out in exactly on Halloween, Halloween Day. We're going to be talking about the episode that cannot be named because it's a curse. We're going
to revisit the Halloween episode, and we're gonna try really hard not to say the name of the episode in the episode.
Yes, and hopefully we don't
we'll
fail.
Make a game out of it.
Yes, maybe a drinking game. Yeah, actually, that's a good idea. You have to take a shot every time you actually accidentally say the word.
Oh, you'll be done.
Yes, I'll be dead before even the opening credits, but. All right, so yeah, that's our plan.
So this episode, nah, but the next one, we're excited about.
Yes, we are.
The next one's one of those classic top tier episodes. And if you've never seen it, go watch it. It's one you can't miss.
No, absolutely, it's a must watch for the series. So definitely go check it out.
We're gonna get a new hologram next week.
Yes. That's exciting stuff. Well, it's not really, but it's not good news for Al.
It's not good news for Al. I saw when I was flipping through Beyond the Mirror Image, looking for to confirm the location of this episode. I saw an ad that's printed in there that ran for a print ad that ran for Leap for Lisa, and it just says. Sam leaps into Al and kills him.
That's some great advertising there. Is that literally the ad campaign they were going with back then?
Yeah, I will get a copy of that ad for us for next week so we can include it in our video.
All right, that's pretty funny. All right, so anything else to say?
That's all I got. Yeah. Do you guys? What did you think of Stand Up? Did anybody like this episode?
Well, I can already tell you that Alpha's opinion wasn't very high in this episode.
Somebody must like this episode. We always have people that like the episodes we don't like.
Yes, I'm sure. Alpha's not one of them. So there's Mimi. Maybe Ashley Wright likes this episode.
Let us know, guys.
Yeah. All right. Stacie, have you reached at?
I've reached on Twitter, X, Instagram, and Threads at TVN Coupon Talk.
If you like this video and want to support the channel, there are a number of ways to do so. You can join one of my Corn Productions Facebook pages. You can follow me on Twitter. You can buy something from the Corn Productions store on Zazzle. You can buy me a copy. You can join the Corn Productions membership for 99 cents a month. And of course, you can like, share, and comment on this video, as well as subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell so you're notified when new content drops. This is Dave and Stacie from Corn Productions Deep Dive TV Podcast, signing off.